So thank you for joining us, Alan. Very grateful for you coming on tonight. As you know, we've done a few of these things now, and we always like to have a guest come on. But this is the first time that we've had a guest on that's actually got an album release as well. So we are excited to hear a bit more about the forthcoming album from Abel Ganz that you're involved in. But where else would we normally start the proceedings of a night but at the beginning? So usually what happens is we like to have a chat with our guests about, where it all started for you and, your journey through your musical career to date kind of thing. And I know, having spoken to you previous to tonight, you've got a few cracking stories and some great anecdotes as well. So we'll dive into that. So, but Alan, just to kick things off, you have you live with your partner Julie, and you have an 11.5-year-old son, Leo, and who I believe is also learning guitar and piano. And you told me that he's got some brilliant feel and some really good timing as well. And you are, aside from an established keyboard, organ, Moog player yourself, a qualified pilot. So, many strings to your bow.
Yeah, okay.
So where did it all start for you then, Alan? Talk us through your musical journey.
Well, in terms of learning the instrument, like my parents bought a piano when I was 4.5. They were given it, to be honest, and I just gravitated towards it.
Mm-hmm.
So I got lessons on piano from that very early age. Must have done about 2 or 3 years of that, and then there was a whole home organ thing going on. So having seen and played home organs and Thompson's Music in Air, my parents bought me an organ, and I just went from there. As far as studying went, I worked my way through all the books on the organ, studied with Billy McEwen through in Mauchline as well. And then at around about age 16, 17, I realised that all the guys that I was listening to were classically trained. Guys like Rick Wakeman, Keith Emerson, John Lord, Tony Banks, all had this classical training behind them. So I got myself a proper piano teacher. And she basically, after 3 months of studying with her, plunked 3 grade 8 pieces in front of me and said, I've entered you in the Ayrshire Music Festival to play these in 3 months' time. Mm-hmm. So I did it, and I came second, which is very good, because that then convinced me that rather than going to university to study a science or engineering, I could actually perhaps study music.
Mm-hmm.
So I did, and I went to Napier University, as it is now, Napier College, which had a phenomenal music department, really performance orientated, some great teachers and mentors there as well. And I studied piano under Margaret Murray MacLeod, did a couple of diplomas there, and then I went to Glasgow University and did a Bachelor of Music course.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a sort of formal development of my education in music.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, the piano led to organ, and then I think back to piano as well.
Yeah, that was it. That was the piano for the first 3 years, and the organ for about 7 or so. I did church organ as well. I should have thrown that in there. And when I was at Napier, I did church organ as a second study. So first was piano. I actually wanted to do classical guitar as a second study, but my piano teacher wouldn't allow me to, because you have to grow your nails too much.
Yes.
That affects the touch, apparently.
Yes.
So I went and did church organ, but I previously studied church organ in a church in Ayr in St. Columba's under a lovely man called Leslie Thornton. So, it was kind of a linear, logical progression. Everything I played has got keys attached to it.
Yeah.
Love to be able to play a bit of trumpet or something, but apart from being able to bang out a few chords in guitar, that's me.
When you were playing the keys on this journey, Alan, which was quite a journey, taking you through all the different stages and learning and proving yourself on an academic basis in music too. Did you have a leaning towards any particular kind of music? Was there, did you feel, I'd really like to be playing this sort of music or that sort of music?
It's a very, very good question. Throughout my life as a child, I always wanted to be a fighter pilot, up until I discovered bands, basically. And from about 14, started playing in bands. And what you want to do then is to emulate your heroes. So we basically, myself and Bud Greenwood on bass, were in the same class at school. So we got together and played. We recruited a great guitarist called Brian Cunningham as well. And we were listening to prog rock. You know, we were, Yes, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Rush, massive influence on me, Rush. Mm. And Brian was very much more of a sort of a hippie guitarist. He was more into Jimmy Page and that sort of style of music. So that then led to us wanting to write that. Mm. So we couldn't find a singer, as is always a problem. But like when you're 17 years old, the answer was go and write an entire set of instrumental prog rock and then gig it.
As you did.
Which we did under the name Epic Leaf. And we wrote these incredibly complex pieces. We vastly overplayed on them. We chucked in a few cover versions of instrumentals, and if we were lucky enough to blag a singer, we'd do stuff like Punch and Judy and throw it in there as well. Mm. And we went out and gigged that. So yeah, prog rock is basically the answer. Classic prog rock.
Yeah.
Yes, Genesis, ELP stuff. Although I do have Brian Cunningham to thank for introducing me to one of my greatest influences, which is Pat Metheny and the Pat Metheny Group.
All right.
Because he bought the album Still Life Talking, listened to it, said, "Oh, it's all keyboards," and gave it to me. Of course, it's not all keyboards. It's, you know, obviously there's Lyle Mays on there, but it's mostly his GR88 guitar synth.
Ah, okay.
That just blew me away. So massively Pat Metheny ever since. And always want to emulate that style of music, and it's finding people to work with, and that's rather difficult.
Thinking of prog rock, Beggar's Opera is a band I can think of in the sort of, 70s. I think Abel Ganz formed in 1980. I don't know if you ever had any acquaintance with Beggar's Opera and their sort of prog rock, no?
No, I didn't. I sort of, thinking back on it, I was aware of Abel Ganz, but we kind of lived in our own little Ayrshire bubble down there, and we were all out doing work in the working men's clubs, playing 3 gigs a week, 3 nights a week, bringing in some good money. It was good living that you could make in that. Thinking back on it now, I think we did the wrong thing in that. What we should have done as a band was do what It Bites did and basically get together an entire set of covers and go out and gig under our own name, if you like, but under our own steam, which would certainly later, when we finally got a singer and became Frontier, would have certainly developed the frontman skills and developed the cohesiveness of the band. Because I saw It Bites in Annan Working Men's Club years ago, doing exactly that. A phenomenal band playing these wonderful cover versions with an incredible guitarist. And I remember chatting to them vaguely. It's back in the mists of time. This is back in the 80s. And they said, "Oh yeah, we're doing our own stuff. We've got a bit of interest." And you still think nothing of it. And then next thing, you're playing Calling All the Heroes.
Yes. Mr. Francis Dunnery. I have had the pleasure of meeting him several times. A good friend of mine, actually, John Gilmore Smith from East Kilbride, had the opportunity to meet Francis as well. He actually, after It Bites, he did a lot of his own original material, and I don't know if he was creator of the idea, but certainly he was very prolific in the idea of coming to people's houses and playing house concerts. And a mutual friend hired him basically to come to his house in Blainfield and played a gig in Gregor's front living room. So we all went along. We were all It Bites fans, and we all went along and had a bit of hero worship, and John got the opportunity to have a chat to him. Yeah, I'm a singer-songwriter and I've got this, that, and the next thing going. Before you knew it, they were exchanging emails and things like that. And Francis agreed to produce his album, his forthcoming album, because John had a whole heap of material. So we went down to Wales and recorded with Francis in the studio. And he's a such a phenomenal mind, a musical mind. You know, he got me and the rest of the guys thinking about things for these songs that John had written that had never even crossed our minds before. You know, it's just constantly on our case, being better. So yeah, familiar with Mr. Francis Dunnery, phenomenal talent,
isn't he, Just? A bit of a raconteur as well.
Oh yeah.
On Facebook as well. He's not short of an opinion or two.
No.
Fair play to the man.
Aye.
Phenomenal musician.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. So that was kind of, I think, in the 80s, your kind of phase one, if you like, of your musical career.
There was other. I sort of did some work around the Sirocco studio set. I worked in the pre-production department there with department's probably too bold a word. I had a pre-production studio run by Robbie Dale, obviously ex Pure Glass. I got in with the Pure Glass guys after they'd come off the deal with Legend. So Henry Dorr and Robbie and I worked on a whole bunch of material as well. Got to play in the big studio, got to learn how a studio operates as well. So that when we Frontier, as we sort of became, but we took advantage of Margaret Thatcher's largesse in the business enterprise scheme and blagged it with a loan to build a studio, ostensibly with a business plan. And I think we recorded one band, but it was just there so that we could do proper quality 8-track demos, really. Right. So yeah,
first time that Maggie Thatcher's been talked affectionately on Vinylcast, Alan. So well done for sliding that.
Yes, I have no further comment on that.
Going through my mind, Alan, when you talk, prog rock is very niche market.
Yes.
And so in a band, you play the music that you want to play, or do you want to make money? Or in an ideal world, you'll play the music that you want to play and you'll make money as well. But I get the feeling, even looking at the album that's to be, Life of the Honeybee, and everything around it, it strikes me as quite intellectual, quite sort of ethereal, deep suggestions in there. And it strikes me as if you're not throwing this out to be of interest to the mass market, that you have your own sort of intellectual niche market that you're aiming for. Would I be completely wrong in saying that?
No, not at all. Very, very good question as well. Again, related back to the 80s, once the record company starts sniffing around you, that's one of the questions that immediately appears. How far are we going to have to sell out here? And today, on the one hand, you don't have the input from the major labels that you used to have. They're not prepared to sign a band and let them build up and develop a voice of their own. That band have to have their own voice. They have to have like 10,000 Instagram followers or something. But you have the ability to do that as well. So you can find your niche market. And when I'm talking about a band going out and playing instrumental prog rock, we did the Abel Ganz festival, mini festival, prog before Christmas, back in December last year. And one of the acts there, Jennifer Ellen Clark, was doing exactly what we were doing all those years ago, but now with a market, because you can actually get out to your niche like we couldn't do back then. And prog rock itself is a surprisingly large, surprisingly enthusiastic niche market, global niche market as well. So the reach is there. And people like to be challenged. People like some thought to have gone into the music, some thought to have gone into production, some thought to have gone into the lyrics. When you mentioned the Life of the Honeybee, the new album, it's just about to come out. And in a sense, it's a concept album. It's all the songs are connected. It's got a more of a lyrical narrative than a storytelling type narrative throughout it. But each song's kind of about the loss of something, loss of love, friendship, innocence, youth, and then the regaining of that. So they're thematically linked. So we're calling it a concept album. That gets down well.
I'd certainly be very interested if it's possible to regain lost youth.
We all.
I noticed that there's quite a lot of acoustic work on it too, which I particularly like, because there was some clips when I Googled it, and that took it away from the prog rock environment, didn't it?
Yes, if you listen, Abel Ganz have always been very good at that. So the last album in particular, was a wonderful song on there called Thank You, which is kind of our encore number. And that's a standalone country song.
Yeah.
Really. The audiences love it. You know, Mick holds a microphone out and they sing. You know, sitting there looking, this is the original song, this isn't a cover, and the audience are singing it. You know, this is fabulous. They have fans, they have a following. Wonderful fans that come up and talk to you and, you know, follow us all on Facebook and things like that and really interact with. So it's a real heartening experience, that has to be said. And
technically, the standard of musicianship is high. It's very good. And so what's played is played very, very well and comes across, just in the clips I've heard, very well indeed.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think the production in the album is standout quality as well. It sounds fantastic.
I mean, like I said, I'm the new guy, so I'm doing a little bit in the album. Like most of the keys were done by Jack Webb, who is a phenomenal human being, a wonderful keyboard player, and he's been a great help to me in coming in and sending me little videos of things and his voicings and the way he sort of thinks about playing. So it's been fantastic. Production, Dennis Smith on drums. Again, wonderful, wonderful ear for music. A real geek, and he won't mind me saying that. He's a complete geek about sound. He, you know, gets excited over buying a microphone and just strives to get the best quality down as possible. And that's quality not just of sound, the quality of performance. And get the best musicians that we can in. Honeybee, the title track itself. When I joined, I was given they were emailing me through the multis for me to work on. At the end, there's a little empty bit, and he said, "I'll just play a electric piano solo there." So, yeah, okay, fine. So I walked up a bit of a solo for the end. And then at one point I said to Dennis, do you want me to rock up a proper solo? And we get done. He went, "Oh, no, we've got a sax player down at Snake Davis."
I know. I saw that. He's terrific. It's quite interesting. It only recently came to my attention, and that was through Facebook. And a common friend of ours, Johnny Morton, who has always played in bands, we know him. And he was pushing Snake Davis and saying, "Guys, have a listen to him." And I listened, really liked it. And then my brother's very keen on jazz and other things. So I'd sent him quite a few clips. So it was very interesting to see that he was in your album.
Oh, you should hear it solo. It's absolutely phenomenal. When it dropped, we were like gobsmacked, and I think he said it's 10 solos or something. So it comped together, one out of them. And the entry, Mick bends up from an A to a B in his voice, and the sax comes straight in on that B, just with a beautiful sustained note, and then kicks off. Oh, it's just, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. I have to cover that live. But again, we don't do it as picking a saxophone sound and emulating it. The sort of brief is do the solo, but, come up with a nice sound for it. So I got a kind of a combination of some sax breathiness in there with a bit of standard keyboard square waves, not square wave, so the sine wave stuff underneath it, and put I'm getting geeky here, forgive me, but because I've got my left hand to do as well, I put a pitch bend on it with aftertouch downwards, so that you can get that sort of sax bend up to the note by hitting it harder and coming off. And then another way that I treat solos is, I'm never going to be able to play a sax solo verbatim and make it work. You can get close with a breath controller and things like that, but we're not going to do that. So what I look for are landmarks within it. Like that entry is a landmark. So you have to hit that entry. There's a little bit in the middle, there's a repeated phrase, so I treat that as a landmark. And then at the end, he does a little bit while the chords are sort of chromatically running down, kind of a Steely Dan chromatic rundown. There's a little phrase on top of that. So again, another landmark to end the song. In the middle, I'll find a way to get between them. And that kind of changes from time to time. Kind of know what I'm going to do, but sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I'll make sure that I hit the landmarks, because I think the audience need to hear landmarks within certain solos.
So Alan, you obviously play quite a few different variants. So I was looking at some of the credits on the new album. So Mini Moog, Moog synth, vibraphone, some other keys, strings. What other stuff do you have around you that you tend to play?
Hammond organ is my big sort of instrument. I sort of developed a Hammond style, and sort of like I said, there's 3 phases to the sort of career. That's been phase 3, and kind of talked about phase 1. Phase 2 was part of me actually developing it and learning how to play Hammond, how to become a Hammond player, as opposed to a guy that plays Hammond. Because all keyboard players can play Hammond organ.
Yeah.
But it's a different kettle of fish to actually get out there and, get dug into it and learn how to work the drawbars and learn the smears and the slides and everything else. But again, when I got to this album, it had already been tracked wonderfully by Jack. And some great parts. The track Sepia and White, when I did the Moog at the beginning, replacing the placeholder, and then it just kicks into this sort of funky Hammond that Jack's doing underneath it. That's just wonderful to play. It is fabulous. It's a hell of a track to get out of, because I then have to go back to the Moog and then from the Moog over to the piano over there without missing a beat, which is a tricky move. But again, if you can't improve on it, why bother? The part's fine, leave it.
And you were talking there about your learning of the Hammond and the phases that you've kind of gone through in your playing career. Was that the time that you were part of Blues Grinder and meeting some other well-known famous prog musicians?
Yeah, the blues grinder thing. Started by reinventing myself as a blues player. I went for I think I was living in Aberdeen at the time, and I went for an audition for a blues band, and I didn't get it. And then the feedback came back, and he's a good player, but he's not a blues player. And I thought about that, and I thought, that's totally correct. I was very blasé. I was just thinking the blues was 3 chords, but it's not. It's a lifetime if you do it correctly. So I went away and woodshedded blues and learned how to play blues, then moved down to England, found myself a way to get in to the blues scene down there, which was effectively, you can walk up to people at gigs till the cows come home saying, "Hi, my name's Al, pleased to meet you. I'm a keyboard player if you're looking for a keyboard player," right? Unless I've heard you, doesn't make a difference. So go along to some of the little mini blues festivals. They always have a jam session. I'll say, "Do you mind if I do a little bit of solo?" And then batter out some boogie piano, which I taught myself how to do. Not very well, but, good enough. That then gets attention, so I then got gigs from that. I worked with a great guy, Dr. JJ, Jim Fair's his name was. He died a few years ago, sadly. But he had a band on the scene down there called Dr. JJ's Blues Band. And they played all over the country and got me in on keys, did loads of gigs, did a whole load of festivals as well. And generally we'd end up as the house band piano player at the festival, which means you get to play with some wonderful people like Nicky Moore and Ainsley Lister and things like that in the jam afterwards. But part of that was, I learned the Hammond. I tend to go off in tangents, forgive me if this, but the reason I got into Hammond particularly was I went to a blues jam in America, in Tampa, and sitting at the bar, and this guy drags in a B3. So, of course, I'm like, whoa, it's got a real Hammond. And most keyboard players will talk to a Hammond player because you think he's mental, basically, for dragging that out. So you sort of got smiling and saying, well done and all that. You're thinking you're totally crazy. And he's like, "Oh no, you play, man. You got to come up and play." So I did. I went up and did a couple of numbers. And then the thing about American blues jams I didn't find so much in Britain is they're not cliquey. The ones I've been to aren't cliquey. And they get kids in. So they would get like a 12-year-old who's learning saxophone, and they would get him or her, I think it was, to play. And a young 11-year-old on guitar would come into the bar and play and then get back out again. And it was just great. And then they got me back up again, and they got me back up again. And it was only later that I was chatting to Dean Germain, was a chap with the Hammond. And he says, "Man, you play like a Brit."
Wow.
And these guys grow up in a gospel tradition. So if you play church organ in America, that means you're playing Hammond B3 in a church. And they've got this wonderful sliding technique that, I don't have. I approach it from the Wakeman, Emerson, John Lord, straight ahead rock way. And they quite liked that, I think. So then I thought, and the experience of playing the organ itself with the Leslie behind you, cranked up in a live situation with wonderful players, it was like surfing. It's the only way I could describe it. So I went and bought one and learned how to play it. Then the next question to me was, could I actually front a Hammond band? So I thought, I'll give it a go. Put an ad in Look magazine looking for musicians, basically, and I got a jazz drummer, and him and I just jammed. And we were jamming around the sort of classic guys, Jimmy Smith, Jack McDuff, Jimmy McGriff, all these sort of classic organists, all that sort of material. Gradually I was throwing in stuff like, what's it called again? Birdland, tracks like Birdland. And then got a guitarist who had the same day job as I did. I didn't want anybody that did that. But when I was going through all the university and all the frontier stuff and everything else, he'd been at GIT, studying under Steve Vai, Paul Gilbert and Jennifer Batten. Phenomenal guitarist. So that led to a band, I set up myself, called Blues Grinder, and it's the one and only time I've ever ran a band. I will never do it again. Never. I love being a sideman, particularly in a great band. You turn up, learn your pieces, you do it, you don't have to herd the cats. But yeah, so that did lead to some pretty cool gigs. We were chatting about this earlier, and again, I just feel like I'm dropping names here in a sense, but it was at a party for an aviation website, and one of the guys that I know there, Paul Jones, used to be a DJ with Red Dragon FM, another good guitarist actually. And he and I chatting. He said, "Oh yeah, Bruce Dickinson's coming along." Oh yeah, brilliant. So of course he does show up and get chatting, and after the usual, I saw you in 1982 in the Number of the Beast tour. That was my first gig. We got chatting and sort of hit it off a bit, and he sort of said, "You know, they're going to have more of these parties. We should put a band together and do some stuff here." So I'm like, "Yeah, right, nice one. Thanks, yeah, it's a good idea." Thinking of nothing of it. And then a couple of weeks later, an email with a really strange address arrives. And it was Bruce saying they were going to get our heads together on this. I thought, what? So I was like, okay. So I then MD'd a whole bunch of these parties that we did. Basically, we put together a whole bunch of rock covers, some Maiden stuff, some Blues Grinder stuff, maybe drag in some other musicians as well, and just have fun. But it did lead to a really bizarre moment when he, you know, for the first one, when we were picking, it's just fired up a thing about my meeting being upgraded. There we go. When we were looking at set list, he said, "Well, let's get our heads together and chat about it." So he came round to my house in Guildford, and a little Volkswagen Polo or something pops in. We go upstairs to my little studio, kind of like this, and I'm sitting there playing Run to the Hills on a piano with Mr. Dickinson behind me singing it. And I'm like, this is not happening.
What's going on?
No, that was quite incredible. And it was great, you know, the gigs went well. We got, like I said, we got friends in, Paul played guitar with us and some. And it was just a hoot.
It was a great time too. The 80s, sorry, I was just going to say the 80s and 90s were a great time to be involved in big bands, strings, organs. I just wondered, did you ever get any influence or meet any of the guys from some of the Scottish fraternity, like the Marillions and the Cunties, Sanusas, all these guys that were around at the time? Did you ever kind of cross paths with them?
In the 80s, Horse, Trash Can Sinatras, really, because they were down there. I think Mike Ogletree had just ended up forming Fiction Factory when I started working in Sirocco.
Tell me, do all the guys in Abel Ganz, do they all play in other bands and just come together to write the music and play in Abel Ganz? Are they all full-time musicians, or are they all involved with many, many other things and just come together to produce an album?
No, it's a constant running band in a sense, but they don't gig often. The guys have got other jobs that they do that provides income that allows the amount of time that's involved in putting together a production of the level and quality that Ganz are capable of. And again, I can say that I'm the new guy. Mick, the singer, wonderful singer, really nice chap as well. He goes out and does a folk thing as a solo artist, which again means that he's not afraid of an audience and has got the banter to go with it, as well as a fantastic voice, both in terms of pitch, which is vitally important, but sometimes more important is quality. And he's definitely got a quality to his voice, a sort of a Scottish Caledonian brogue, I think it was described as by a reviewer there. I never thought of those two words, so I'll put them together and claim them as my own. But it's definitely got that, you can tell it's a Scottish band. And I like that.
Yeah.
So do I, yeah. And I don't think he uses that much effect, a post-processing effect on his vocals on the album as well. They do sound quite dry. It's lovely, and I think it really does suit his voice. But some other singers who may not have as nice a voice or as nice a quality of voice will butter it up with effects and things. But it sounds very, very pure almost in the album.
No, there's no need. And a lot of that, particularly this album, the mastering was done by Simon Weinstock, who I'm sure I met standing in the corner of Park Lane because he mixed Texas's first album.
Right.
So, we must have crossed paths at some point. But he's based in Israel, so it was sent over to him. But again, with a voice of that quality, and if the recording's done well enough that everything's separated in terms of tonality and frequency, and there's a little space for it to sit, you don't need to do anything to it really, but have a compression and a tiny bit of reverb, really. And do you know what? And the bugger can play guitar to a lead guitar standard as well.
I thought the guitar, just talking about guitar in the album there, I thought the Aaron Shore's acoustic sound and playing was just sublime. What a song.
That's a venerable Davy King. I think we call him Dr. King, but no, he's not a doctor, but he's called Dr. King. Yeah, Davy's a phenomenal player. He's also another massive, he's an even bigger Rush fan than I am.
Really?
Oh yes, very, very Rush influenced, but really tasteful. There's some great little moments from him that he creates in the solos. And it's like I said, your little landmarks. And he's got some lovely little landmarks in the solos. And Aaron Shores itself is a wonderful cinematic piece of finger picking. Really lyrical, really descriptive. And I love Tour de Force.
I'm glad you said that, Alan. I was listening to refreshing my memory of some of the songs, and I wrote a bunch of words down: operatic, cinematic, classical, prog, melodic rock. There's even some kind of far out Woodstocky moments in there as well. There's such a diverse amount of influences in there. It must be quite an interesting creative pot when you all get together.
Well, yes. I mean, at the moment, I'm the live donkey, basically. So we haven't actually started formally writing any material for the next album, but there are a bunch of songs out there already on the go that are at different stages of development. I think what they did with the previous album is, you never know if it's going to be a last, so they thought, well, it's going to be a last, so they threw everything at the self-titled album. So I think perhaps that long, and although it's a wonderful album, you could have written it shorter. It could have been, some of them could have been left for another album. Whereas the writing process on this album was with vinyl in mind. So it wasn't the whole concept. You got this particularly in the 90s when it first came out, CDs first came out. Bands are putting out 90 minutes worth of material. Probably in general 55 minutes of what should have been written. So even some great artists did that. So when you've got the focus of 20 minutes aside, really, 19 minutes aside, 20 minutes, whatever it is, then that really does tighten up the writing process and the dynamics of the album as well. So the whole thing was geared towards a vinyl release, which is fantastic.
The last album was released in 2014. So when did the process for the Honeybee album start? How long has that been in the pipeline?
I think since 2014, to be honest. Like I said, I've got 18 months experience, so I can only really talk about from conversations with the guys. But a lot of the songs, they spent a long time working on them. And I heard some early versions recently of the Honeybee track itself, and it's, it's virtually there. Just placeholder vocals, things like that. So the thing is, time tends to move in a glacial manner with Ganz when it comes to releases, but there's also an urgency that I'm sensing in the band at the moment to get another album out, say in a couple of years' time. Still spend the time writing and recording it, but perhaps speeding up the glacier somewhat. And, and also there's two new guys in the band, really, because Davy King's, he preceded me by about a year, replacing the fabulous Davy Mitchell who moved abroad. Davy works in a certain way, in a different way. I work in a certain way, in a different way. I'm more set up for remote recording as well. You know, I can work on stuff and polish it and develop it, and then eventually re-record it later on. So I think we'll see something sooner rather than later. But for the moment, I actually got a copy of it. It's a wonderful piece of artwork. For the moment, I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
Lovely paint.
Nice.
Really good. Out in July the 6th.
Would you, once all this is passed, and heaven knows how long that will be, consider doing a tour?
Definitely. Just finding the guy's time that we can all be free and do it. Oh yeah, I'd love to go and tour with this band and tour this material. We tend to do mini tours. So you'll go somewhere and then try and tie in a couple of gigs. I mean, we've been invited to Chicago. So I've got a friend over in Chicago who's very big in the Hammond organ world over there. So we could tie in a visit to Chicago with another couple of gigs in the vicinity. It could be done. You know, not big gigs. Again, it's prog we're talking here. But, you know, and we talked, Graham and I were chatting the other day about something that we did back in December with Ganz was basically Big Train. We're playing in Edinburgh. So we put on an afternoon gig. Yeah, great band, aren't they? We put on an afternoon gig in the Voodoo Rooms. Because we knew a lot of our audience are into Big Train. And we could maybe get some of their audience, but a lot of our audience was in town anyway.
Yep.
So the place was virtually full.
I think their album English Electric is one of my favourite albums of all time. I mean, you know, I just, you talking earlier on about your influences and ELP and Rush and Marillion and all that. Yeah, that's exactly my style of music as well. And I think now, you know, we've got so many prog artists. You're right, it can be niched, but I think it's in a good way. And I think that the mediums that artists have now got to get their music out there, you know, through streaming sites or through, you know, bespoke revenue models is fantastic. And people like me, I just lap it up. I would love, you know, to have more Abel Ganz stuff now that it's so easy almost to get a hold of it quite quickly, you know. And Stephen Wilson's been a prolific prog writer and artist and performer for years. I just love his stuff, but he was very much of the same ilk as well about holding back from Spotify for a while, you know, try and get your revenue through other models, but he's now released all his stuff from there. And I think it's a shame in some respects that artists might be forced down that route because, you know, it's what the public want, but they don't get paid anything from that at all, which is, it's criminal almost.
No, nothing. I do think there is a realisation coming as well, or developing, that, you know, the artists aren't getting the money that they used to get from the companies, because it just doesn't exist much anymore. So, well, I mean, particularly my, it's not a can of beer, it's a can of San Pellegrino here. But, you know, Amanda Daughtry, Nashville country, wonderful country singer with a phenomenal guitarist in their band. It's a bit of merch. You know, I'll go and see the band, I'll buy a bit of merch. I'll download a CD, I'll download something from the bands that I like.
Yep.
So I think people are realising that in order for music to still be in place, you actually have to find a way of showing your appreciation.
Definitely.
Yeah, I had a privilege to spend some time in the US in 2013 for a couple of weeks, Alan, and some of the names you've mentioned, or the places rather. So Chicago was wonderful, and was there about Paddy's Day, so that was an incredible time of year to go there. Excuse me, in Nashville and Memphis, spent a bit of time there. And the thing that always struck me, we got to play a few times, in the house band, they would be delighted if there was other bands coming in, because they would always get the chance to walk around with a bucket to get people to chuck the dollars in it. So the house band were delighted to take a break, because they'd be playing 3, 4, 5 times a day. That's the thing I love about the scene in the US versus the UK, because all the kits there, you turn up with a guitar and plug in, and you just do the tour around the houses, don't you? It's great. I was sitting here scribbling while you were talking. Sorry, there's an obvious question that forgive me for asking. Abel Ganz, I'm writing here legals, and I'm writing all sorts of words here, trying to come up. Does it stand for anything in particular, or is it just a random bunch of letters?
No. Back in 1980, the gentleman that formed the band based the name on a French film writer, basically, or director, who was famous for a 7-hour epic on the life of Napoleon. And his name was something very similar to Abel Ganz. Definitely Abel, and I think it's Ganz spelled differently in the back. It's actually named on a guy with a cool name. That was the mists of time. Hugh Montgomery would be able to tell you. Hugh Montgomery had Sean Carter.
It's funny because the name's brilliant. It's really catchy, but I think some of the names of the songs are wonderful. I mean, Unconditional, that's quite a standard name, but then Portion of Noodles. Dreamtime, Pick a Window, You're Leaving. I think some of the names for songs are wonderful.
I love that type of Pick a Window, You're Leaving. Yeah, it's great, isn't it? You know, and even in the current album, there's a lot of thought has gone into the title of the songs. I mean, without giving too much away, because the lyrics are very personal to Mick, but The Life of the Honeybee and Other Moments of Clarity is a story of when you have a member of your family who is losing their faculties and they can't recall 10 minutes ago, but they can recall moments from the youth. And that little beautiful vignette, you know, when he told me the story behind that, I was tearing up. I was like, oh, how are you going to introduce this live? Because I can't. You know.
So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Graham and let's see if I can get above 2 this time.
It's the Vintage Vinyl Big Quiz.
Really, just shout out, Alan, as you feel like it, or raise a hand. No pressure now. It's all just a bit of fun. So, question number 1. Which heavy metal rock band has Tommy Lee played on drums?
Motley Crue.
I think that was possible there. Just sneaking in. Now, I'll go off to something completely obscure now. Who composed the score for The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly?
Good, Connie.
Well done. Superb.
Harder than that.
Right, we'll move to something completely different again. What was the biggest selling album of the 80s?
Thriller.
Fantastic.
Whoa. Oh, on fire.
Man. Well, it's now 2 to Alan, 1 to Graham, and Rich is going to make a late charge. Which festival saw Jimi Hendrix set his guitar on fire in 1967?
Isle of Wight.
Sorry?
Isle of Wight.
Woodstock.
Nope.
Was it Woodstock?
Nope. It was the Monterey Festival.
Monterey.
Which new wave band was fronted by David Byrne?
Talking
Talking
Heads.
Heads.
Who
All right,
got that
Alan, just
first?
hit me to that one.
Just sneaked it. Well done, sir. At what age did Kurt Cobain, Jim Morrison, and Jimi Hendrix die? Yes.
27.
Fantastic.
That's it. Game's over.
I don't know how much further we can go with this. Okay. In which US state was Bruce Springsteen born? Yes.
New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Yeah.
I did say it, but I was being too polite. I should have put my finger in.
Shirley Manson is the lead singer of which band? Yes.
Garbage.
Garbage. Right. So, maybe I'll try something different here. Which band sang the theme song for Friends?
Rembrandts.
Well done, Graham.
Well done, Graham.
Right, I think I'll make this the last question, gentlemen. Which 70s rock star was also known as the Lizard King?
Tim Morrison. Sorry, Tim Morrison.
It was. Ah, well, Alan got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 there. In fact, I'll ask one more question. Which 70s country rock band was named after an American high school gym teacher? Yes?
Leonard Skinner.
Unbelievable. I'm telling you, if we're ever going for a pub music quiz, we'll give you a phone.
God, aye.
It's just listening to Popmaster every morning.
Ah,
10:30, Radio 2, Popmaster.
Well, you rattled off 8 correct answers there, just like no
Unbelievable.
bother at all. So well done, Alan. Superb.
That's the
I
highest
think we'll
score I think we've
nominate
ever
you.
had.
I think, yeah, I know, and you're still overshadowed, Graham.
No?
I was deliberately keeping my mouth shut to see how many points you could get. No, I think we'll nominate you, Alan, for Popmaster. Brilliant.
I have to say.
Well done, Graham. Thank you once again. A couple of questions, if you don't mind, for me.
Sure.
There seems to be a bit of a theme, Alan, through some friends that I have and some people that we know, particularly keyboard players who tend to love flight. But where did this love of aviation come from?
Basically, as a kid, I just, like I said, I always wanted to be a fighter pilot. There was no two ways about it. And it was only when I got to about 14 that I was sort of sidetracked into playing in bands. And a little bit later on, I did a private pilot's license. And I can still remember the first time I actually landed a light aeroplane at Prestwick Airport, coming in from the sea and touched down. The amount of work that I'd had to put into doing that was exactly the same that I just had to give into playing a piece of Rachmaninoff at an annual recital at college. It was a phenomenal amount of work. Now, with practice and with that tends to back off a little bit. But they're both right brain activities at the end of the day. It's the actual physical act of flying an aeroplane is making the world look right. You know, make the picture outside my window tie in with the way it should do. And on a day that's gin clear and there's no wind, then the left brain gets a chance to speak up, and the left brain's going, you're 2 knots fast, right? And now 2 knots slow, and all this. And you end up slamming it in because you've been using the wrong side of your brain.
Yeah.
But on a day when it's chucking wind at you from all directions and you get up and down, and you've really just got to look out the window with a very quick glance inside to make sure everything is correct to the best of your ability, you're just making the world look right. We're using that side of the brain.
I think it has been great having you on, Alan. I really enjoyed it, and I knew that the guys would love meeting you as well. And I think there are loads more we could probably talk about, but in the interest of time and everything else, usually at this time of the proceedings, we like to ask our guests for either an anecdote from a time that they've been on stage, or something that they've seen, or a story that they've heard. We try and keep things clean on the show, or we've also had guests do a little bit of a noodle, or have a wee play in the instrument, obviously keeping in mind copyright and everything else. Which would you prefer to see us out of our show tonight?
I mean, I've got a little condensed version of Minuano 6/8 with Pat Metheny, which I think would pass copyright if you want to try that.
Oof.
Yeah.
Lovely
Bravo.
stuff.
Lovely.
Well done.
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah,
No, that's from our side. I think it's lovely to be in your company, and Alan, especially for you to give us a little demo of that song at the end as well. It's been fantastic listening to some of the stories, and especially really some exciting times coming up for the band ahead. I'm sure Graham will testify to that, won't you?
Yeah,
absolutely.
One of the questions I was going to ask you, you showed us a picture of the CD. Is there a press date for the vinyl yet?
Press date for the what, sorry?
For the vinyl?
I think it's the same time.
Is it? Excellent.
We've had the test pressings in. We're expecting the vinyl to arrive any day now, really. So the hope
that big moment
is to get them all out at the same time. In fact, that's why it was delayed a little bit, was to allow to accommodate the vinyl.
And that vinyl will eventually become vintage vinyl.
I love it. Nice one.
Nice one, Graham.
Thank you so much for having me. I really very flattered.
Wonderful stuff. Well, I have to say cheerio and good night, I'm afraid. But yeah, thank you so much, Alan, for coming on and sharing some of your stories with us. And we, as I say, we'll put some links onto the forthcoming album, and all the very best with it, indeed, in our regards to the rest of the guys in the band.
Well, again, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me. And
Certainly.
Cheers, guys.
All the best. Good luck. Thank you, mate.
All the best, Alan.
Cheers.
Cheers,
Take
mate.
care.
Bye-bye.